Production support for Hot and Cold is brought to you by American Solar Technics, manufacturers of components for wood burning and solar heating systems.
Hey boys and girls, I'm Builder Tom. Welcome to our new season. It's hot and cold, it's a new season, got a new hat, and we got a lot of stuff to show you. You've been waiting too long, and I'm sorry about that, but let's get started. Well, it's been a long time. Actually, it's been about 3 weeks in real time since we showed the last program, which you saw last week. We've got a lot of stuff done, and not the least of which is we started out or ended up or went somewhere. You saw us where we framed out the opening for the atrium door. The atrium door is now in. We have ice and water shield around the perimeter of the door. Missing a piece somewhere down in the bottom corner, but we'll get that. And the idea of the ice and water shield is that it's a water barrier, because we'll have trim over this and then we'll have clapboard coming up to the trim. And we want this behind that any cracks, because that's where water's going to leak. You remember it was all rotted underneath here. Water was leaking down. We have ice and water shield on the bottom, so now all that wood is protected. And hopefully, the concept we're going for is that we will not have the leakage we've seen before. We will overlap this with 30-pound felt tar paper, and then we'll probably put a drainage plane material behind the trim and the sheathing as well. For now though, this had to be in before this could go in, and this was a real trip. This is a one-piece door. This is made by the Atrium Door Company. It's got operable side lights which open up to ventilate. You got to see the screens here. We'll show you more when we go inside. And it's really a lovely door. It is heavy as death, and it took 3 of us to get it in. And you know, Mr. Home Improvement measured the door a couple times, made the opening, and it was shy by about 1/4 inch on this end, so we had to do some whittling. We didn't have the camera, which was a good thing because I was very upset about it. And we will replace that piece of ice and water shield on the top when that time comes. We're not ready to close anything in yet, so that's not a big deal. You can see also that we've got the sheathing up. We've got the pressure treated plywood on the base here. Then we've got OSB up above that. We went up 1 foot beyond just so we could get over the door, and we're leaving it there till we go into the gable end more, which is a lot of fun. We've come around the front of the building. So much has happened in the front of the building, it's hard for me to even think about it. It looks a little bit different. And where do we even start? We've got all the panels in for the front of the building, and I put 2 full panels in on either side coming in from the edges. And I'm going to get up on the staging just so actually the staging has been moved and isn't level, but you know, for television it's fine. And what we did, well, that's real secure, was I put the 2 full panels in, and then I knew we had to put 2 mini panels to fill in the right width for the entry here. Well, that side went really fine, and I did it, and then I got over to this side, and what happened was, this is the edge of the second panel. When I popped it in, relieved the weight off of it for the floor jack, or the jack that was holding it up, the end I could see was kind of crushing down. There was an awful lot of load here. So it scared me a little bit, so I jacked it up to take some of the load off the edge here. And that night, or next day, I made up these 2 mini panels, 29 inches wide. All 4 edges are all really beefed up. There's a lot of wood in these. They're heavier than the 4-foot wide panels, and they're really posts. that are carrying the load. And my assumption was that there was a lot of load here, was sagging in the middle, and these posts would help, which they did. But before I put the posts in, I wasn't even planning on doing it the day I brought them down. I got this staging I borrowed from my friend Jim, had it set up properly as opposed to the way it is right now. And I stripped out the eave area here that was covered from here up. And what did I find? I found a couple interesting things. Looking for the best place to show you. We've got the ring beam that we have going around the entire perimeter of the house where the panels are supporting. And then we have these really funky pieces of sapling, I call them, that are sawed flat on two sides. They're roughly 3x4s. And they go up to another ring beam that is up here. You can't see it because of the trim. You can see it. We'll show you on the other edge. And that's the roof. And this teetery affair holds the roof in place. It's actually, these are mortised in, and it's not very teetery, although some of them on the other gable ends were kind of funky, so I put screws in to tighten up the mortises. So we opened this up, we cleared out all the old insulation. You can see I've roughed in some electrical boxes so I can run wiring, and we will cut and fit foam in here. But that wasn't the surprise, that was all easy stuff. We got over to the middle, and much to my surprise, in the middle of the building is this. This is a 10-inch, actually it looks more like 12-inch by 6, I should measure it because it looks bigger than what I've been telling people on the radio. It's 11 by 8 post that was cut off when they put the, you know, we had the wide entry, the door with the two side lights. That was cut off probably 100 years ago for them to put the big entry in. And it was just left hanging. And what held it in place was the ring beam was mortised in here, this side of the ring beam's mortised in here, and there's a floor joist I'll show you inside that goes perpendicular, goes that way towards the back of the house, all mortised together. Those mortises were holding this post in place, and that's what all the sag was we saw on the front. The funky posts that were on the walls here contributed, but the major sag was because of that. So what I did was I jacked up on this point, and we sistered a 2x8 on the outside with glue and screws, lots of screws. You can see all these little holes are screws. I was screwing around all day doing this, and then we put a piece here which would be the top of the entry, and we have jack studs which come up underneath to support it. We've also plated it to the stud, so we have a lot of support for this beam now that was not there. It was completely non-existent before, and we were able to hold it in place. And we boxed it in. We have a 2x6 underneath here, and then we have another 2x8 on the back side, again with jack studs holding it up and plated in place. The idea is to support this thoroughly, which it does. So we've made it level, which was a wonderful thing. The problem was we had to tear everything apart to find this problem. We did find it. It is remedied, and all is right with the world. I don't know, but I think we might be getting close to a break already. Yep, let's take a break. And we've only gone around two sides of the house. We have two more sides to go where things have happened, and we still have to go inside. We might have to do another show on this. Okay, we're back, and I built some staging for the gable end just because I was going to borrow staging, but I didn't have access to a lot. So I thought about it, and I'd done this years ago, and I got some 16-foot pressure-treated 2x4s, which I'll be able to reuse on another project later on. And I framed this together in about an hour or so, and it's quite rugged. I've got OSB for decking. I would prefer plywood, but I didn't have any kicking around. I had some old OSB, and I've got 2x3s underneath that are 1 foot apart. And it's a fairly solid, very secure deck to work off of. I don't like ladder jacks. I don't like pump jacks. I like staging. So I built this staging, which we'll have to elevate up as we go higher. You can see here we're actually 12 feet off the bottom of the top of the foundation, 3 4-foot high lifts of OSB. And this is that second ring beam I was telling you about that comes along over to here, and it picks up the roof. And I've got to go up a little bit higher to get this next level for the gable ends. The gable ends are a lot of fun. So what we did was, as you saw on the other side where it was opened up, we have put electrical boxes in, we've run the wiring, and then we foamed the cavity, which is 8 inches thick. And it was full of cellulose, and I really debated whether I wanted to touch the cellulose, but what I discovered was the cellulose smells of what I perceive as mouse urine. And there were little tunnels in cellulose as well as in fiberglass. So both fluffy insulations had mice infestations, and there was a smell that I don't like, so it all came out. It was a lot of fun. There's nothing I find more enjoyable than taking out old insulation and bagging it to get rid of it. The electric drop was over here. It is gone for the time being. We had CMP come take it out so I could do all this. We're going to put a new hook in here somewhere in this area, and we have an electrician coming. We'll put the new meter trim in. We'll show you what's going on the inside related to that. But we're just working our way up here, and so we've got about 8 inches in the wall cavity up to this beam, and then it gets thinner. This is about 3 inches up here, and we've got 2 inches over that. Then we have 1.5 inches over that, so that's what, 3.5 inches. Then we have another 2 inches to get everything out in the same plane. So we've got 5.5 inches of foam going over this, 2.5 or so that'll be in the wall cavity. So we'll have about 7-8 inches of foam on the gable ends, which I think is a pretty good R value. This is the phone line, in case you were wondering. And we're just picking away. And what's nice about this is it's secure. We've got this to fall back on if we need to. And we just go along and pick stuff apart. And all it takes is time and the weather holding. So what the next step you'll see in the next week or so is I will have elevated this up to the top of here. I'm using the top of each layer of sheathing as my level point for these posts. So we'll do that and we'll continue. The windows have to come out, and we'll reset them out in the new plane, which will be out, what did I say, 5.5 inches or so. So we'll probably have to do some framing around those as well. And fortunately, this is not a gigantic area to cover because we're up in the air now 12 feet. We'll be up 16 and maybe higher to get that done. But this is a good thing. Around the back of the building, we've come up similar elevation. The gable end, or the eave area, is still closed in, much the way it was in the front. We've torn some off, but it really needs to be staged to do it well. We're just trying to work off ladders, and it's very precarious with these big boards. So we'll come around after we finish the front completely, do the back, and then just go right up. We popped in, you may have noticed, there are windows in this house now. Popped in some vinyl windows. We talk a lot about windows, and you know, some people really loathe vinyl windows, but a vinyl window is a perfect application. If you don't put them anywhere else, they're a great application for down in a basement opening because you're going to have splash back up here. These are not going to rot or do anything weird. I haven't trimmed out the foam yet. I just have it there, and it looks lovely, doesn't it? Excuse me. So we've got the windows are roughed in. These are we made boxes, wooden boxes that are 2x12s that are trimmed down a little bit, and the sheathing overlaps. And the windows are just in temporarily right now. What we'll do is, after we go over the top and actually get the wall all done, we'll take the windows out because there's only 4 screws that hold them in place. We'll ice and water shield this opening like we did with the door, and then we'll put the window in the proper plane. It's set back a little bit because what I've been doing, if you look up at the top of the window, I've set it back in a dite. And what I did over here, let's just run around the corner for a second, because I basically want to try to get things done as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. You see up beyond the staging there, I haven't cut that sheathing back, so I just pushed the window back a little bit so I could just put the sheathing right across. And when I take the window out to do the ice and water shield and all that, I'll just cut that out with a recip saw or a circular saw, and it will be done. So we're making progress all the way around. We've cut and fit foam in here, and it's starting to look like a house to me again. And I guess the best way we can look at that is if we take a peek inside. So we're going to take a very quick break, and then we'll go inside. Well, we're back, and I've cleaned up a lot of stuff inside. Of course, we have all this glass in here now. It feels much more like a house to me. And of course, the first thing is the atrium door, which I've told you about. and we really fit it in very snugly, and it works beautifully. The cool part about the atrium door is these side lights, which have major bolts on the edges, and you can swing them in, have the door closed, and still get great ventilation by having both sides opened right up. Isn't that wonderful? We'll leave them open. On the inside here, you can see, this is the front entryway, you can see the post, and we had to trim it back a little bit to get it to fit properly, which we did. And when that got leveled up, of course, the whole front of the house got leveled, and that motivated me to put this wall back in, which was the wall that separated the kitchen area from the sort of living room area. And it catches major ceiling joists or beams every 4 feet or so. So we jacked this up. This one went up about an inch. This one here went up about roughly an inch also. This one here is a stub one where the thing was shaved back from 8 inches to 1 inch for this old stair. This one went up about 1.5 inches. And then the last two over here, we had to do no jacking to. They were level. So that was wonderful. And got this all in, and we're now to a point where we're looking at, I'm thinking at least, about sheetrocking things because we're moving very quickly. We've set the panel finally. I just was watching a rerun of the show, and it was the first or second show we were talking about on the house last year. We were talking about putting a panel in temporarily. We didn't do that. The panel is now in and mounted because we're anticipating the new meter trim going in and all this happening fairly soon. So we've got this in, and we started roughing in electrical boxes, and people ask me about electrical boxes. How do we fit them into the wall, because they go back further than the thickness of this wall stud, which is only 1.5 inches. And what I do is I just whittle out a hunk of foam and just pull it out and recess the box. And just go around. We've got them 18 inches off the floor. And I've been putting a lot of electrical boxes in because it doesn't take long. This is easy to do. It doesn't take long to put them in. And again, code, we've talked about this before, is roughly 3 feet from either corner you should have one. So we have one here, one here. We're going to have some fancy window trim. And on the windows, there was a panel effect underneath the windows. We didn't want to put any electrical outlets in the middle of the panel, so we've got them to either side and have avoided the window, under the window at all costs. So that's actually put a few more outlets into the space, but that's a good thing. More outlets has never been a problem for people. And of course on these walls here, it's very easy to put them in because we just nail them right on. We don't have to dig out any foam, but even digging the foam out takes almost no time. We've got a kitchen area now that is discrete, and we know again where everything is. So, and one of the other motivations, other than getting things leveled up for the second floor, was to be able to define again the space, because we moved things around just a bit, and we want to start to plan out how the kitchen's going to lay out. I don't have a clue, but we will figure that out. This has sort of become the catch-all space for everything. So the plan is this. We're going to rough in all the boxes we can and get the power hooked up to all the outlets we can. So this room will be completely done with wiring. This room will not, because we're not sure where everything is going to go yet. Second floor, we can put all the wiring in. Basement, we can put all the wiring in. And again, a 1,000 square foot house won't take long to wire everything. So that's going to be wonderful to have plugs everywhere, have a 100 amp service, which will deal with anything we can throw at it, and we'll just keep picking away at these things. The other thing, of course, is you may or may not remember all these walls, or front and back walls in particular, were kind of sloping. Now we have straight walls. So the plan is, in the rooms that are wired, we really can start to put sheetrock up. And we'll go right up to the top of the new wall panels in the top of that new wall, and we'll stop and not go any further, because we're going to put we're going to sheetrock the walls, as I said, but we're going to put V-match pine, either V-match pine or V-match cedar, on the ceiling. So we will need to level this up a little bit with strapping, because it isn't perfectly level. And The old ceilings, I don't even remember if you were here when we did the old ceilings, but the old ceilings did not have too much holding them up. There will be a lot holding them up when we get back to it. One thing I want to point out is everything in this house is screwed together. The only thing I can think of right now that is not screwed in are these boxes which have nails on the sides. Everything else structural has screws of one shape or another holding it together. And what I have to emphasize is two things. Screws, if you make a mistake, you can back right out. If you're using a Torx head screw, which is what we're using. The other thing is screws are a lot stronger than nails. And in many different types of structural issues, screws will hold extremely well where a nail is apt to just pull out. So there were some things I had to do in doing this wall where I had to take things apart, and the screw just made it extremely easy to do. And it really, I think, is less wear and tear on the human body, running the screw gun. After a while it gets a little tedious as opposed to swinging a hammer or even using a pneumatic nailer. So I love the concept. We ran into some mischief in setting windows over here. Remember when I put the stairs in and put in the landing, the placement of these stairs is a little different because we were trying to get that angle to be more comfortable. And what that meant is everything kind of got pushed back this way and pushed out that way because we elongated it. There was a window here originally, and the placement of the window has an impact on how much counter space you have in the kitchen. So I realized we had to pull this window as far, I'm going to fall down the stairs, as far towards this opening as we could. So we did, it intersected with this landing for the stairs, and actually is down beyond the opening, the box that I put in for the window. And you can see here what I did, because I don't think we showed this on any previous show. This is a box that I built out of 2x12s. And the way that the opening was dealt with was I took my electric chainsaw and just cut the panel out, the width and the height of that box, which in this case I think was 39 by 54 or 57, excuse me. And I just set the box in. Very easy to do. Got it plumb, got it level, put a couple of screws in just to hold it temporarily, and then we cut out on the bottom and put in plates, or I guess we call it a plate, a stud on either side to hold everything together. It's all screwed together as well, and then we foamed it in where all the cracks are, and it becomes very solid. And this is an extremely solid wall now. Then again, we just set the window in temporarily. So this is very quick. The only negative about it is it's very messy because you're using an electric chainsaw. It throws dust everywhere. I have since cleaned up the mess so you didn't have to see it. I tried to spare you that, although it was kind of interesting. It may be that when we get to it that I don't have a piece of wood. Well, I'll steal this piece of wood. That I think if we trim out to the bottom of here over to here, we don't have to whittle on any of this. And my original plan was to whittle that opening to make everything fit. But what I did was I cut this from the inside, I cut the sides from the inside, I then went outside to cut this last part, and that worked well. Am I making sense? Sometimes I don't think I make any sense. I'll tell you what, let's take a quick peek upstairs, and then we're going to wrap things up. Upstairs, this is the front wall of the house where it was all slopey, and look what's happened. The plaster had cracked in the process of doing the floor over. And it's cracked more because now we have leveled everything up. And what's happened over the years, as the building kind of settled down towards the center, somebody came along and filled the cracks and repaired them. I have now lifted everything up to where it was maybe when the house was originally built and plastered. And all this plaster has just blown right out. So we're going to have to replaster that. But that's the price you pay. It's an old house. If you didn't have to do plaster repair in an old house, what's wrong with you? Well, let's look around the other side here. One thing I want to point out in doing this wall underneath the kitchen, or from the kitchen that's underneath here, the second floor has leveled up pretty well because of the things we did in the front and what we've done, which is, well, I don't know, under here somewhere. In this room, we've had the same kind of issue with the same kind of blowing out of plaster, not quite as bad as the other room. So, but you know, hey, we can live with this. It's not a big deal. This all works out in the end. We're not going to have to do a lot up here other than touch up plaster. We are going to paint, get rid of the borders, and just clean things up. But you'll see more about that later on. I think we're roughly at the halfway point of the project. There's still a lot more to do. I hope you can come with us every week and be on the journey, as it were, in terms of getting this old house back up to speed. We will actually get the major stuff done before the snow flies outdoors. Then we're going to come indoors and work on getting everything pretty and working properly. So I hope you can stay with us because there's a lot more to come. We got to go. If you have any questions, give us a call on the radio. You see where at the end of the show. And remember, you got to be careful when you're cutting things because you only have 10 fingers.
Production support for Hot and Cold is brought to you by American Solar Technics, manufacturers of components for wood burning and solar heating systems.